Greetings! It is I, Tatus Dracovin, your Lord and Emperor here at the Dracovin Empire, and of course, welcome everybody. Live long and prosper. Wait, I can do it. Aha! See, I can do it. Took me a second. But I can do it. I can do the Vulcan thing. We're talking Star Trek adventures today. Yes. We're diving in. We're setting our phasers to fun or stun, your choice. The fun one is if you're just silly. And we're going to be talking about more Species Guide. Because last time I went over the species you can play in the base book and that in the Alpha Quadrant expansion book. But there are 3 other books, and today we're hopefully going to hit in 2 of them. I'm going to go deeper into the Beta Quadrant and the Gamma Quadrant. When we talk Beta Quadrant, we hit a lot of original series and some next gen, but when we hit Gamma Quadrant, we're doing very heavily Deep Space Nine. So that's kind of where the lore of everything is coming from. And I'm just going to go over the basics of who these are and kind of that kind of information. That's the idea, is you get a familiarity with these different species to know if you'd be interesting to play them. And there are a huge selection of them here. So, why don't we dive right in and get back to this. So I will, of course, set up here. I do have some images for us to enjoy. Now, unfortunately, these pictures are mixed bag because he's finding stuff online. Yeah. So, here, Ardanan, Ardanan. So, they came about in the original series, is where you first met them. They get attributes are finesse, presence, and reason. And they are from a society that is divided. They have 2 castes that hold strength over their ways. I'm just kidding. So, sorry. So the 2 groups are the Stratos, which are coming from the cities that float in the floating cities that they have. They're the city dwellers, and the surface-dwelling troglodytes. They're no different anatomically. The troglodytes have suffered more from various conditions, mental difficulties, have lower brain functioning, basically. They're exposed to these mines, Xenite mines, where they labor, and the Federation Bureau of Investigation got involved, and breathing apparatuses mandatory for them. Stratos is these beautiful floating cities in the lower atmosphere of Ardanan, their planet, and people there are devoted entirely to art, government, and culture. So it's this thing that their culture is very divided. Certainly, getting more into the next generation era, you see the problems with their societies being worked upon. Either way, they're very hardy people. They have this duality of the art and culture of the city-dwelling people, and then the mining and resource management for the surface-dwelling people. And when the gas mask and stuff came about for the troglodytes, their academic level and artistic abilities became more on par with the city-dwellers. So both people still are stout, but also cultural excellence. So it's sort of like the people below were suffering for a lot of years. The Federation kind of, as kind of grouping with them, helped them out. And so now, both sides of the culture are flourishing. There are 2 possible traits you can choose: above the clouds and Xenite in the soul. Which either you are kind of in the mining group or the above the sky group. It's kind of like it sort of tells you where you are in the caste system, in the 2 parts of the caste system. But that is the Ardanan, which I'm hoping I'm saying their name correctly. I will probably butcher names. Let's continue onward with our good friends here. The Benzite. So this is a Benzite here. Now, their attributes control, insight, and reason. they have this hairless, blue-green complexion. They've got this kind of strong brow ridge protection, the 2 tendrils above the lips. It was in 2370 that the Benzite started to have less trouble being with Starfleet. Because before then, it's the fact that the standard atmosphere on most starships is a nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere. And they began to be able to have less trouble because they got these breathing apparatuses. Even without the breathing apparatus, there was something else that changed. And the rumor is that it's genetic engineering. The reports are unconfirmed, but basically, up until then, breathing apparatus, they had trouble with it, that is something they could have had. But genetic engineering kind of changed things, that there are those that apparently can go without the breathing aids. Benzite are highly meticulous, and they are a valuable resource when it comes to exploration and investigation because of their meticulous nature. So, they tend to have a little bit of a colder-blooded nature. Their body temperature lower than most average humanoids. They're not actually cold-blooded, they just have a lower on average temperature. Their blood is, in fact, mercury and platinum-based. So that's one of those things about it, is they have materials in it. So, like, while we have, like, iron in our blood, there's our mercury and platinum for their metals that are in their blood. They have 2 opposable thumbs on each hand, aiding in dexterity. And they're good in Class M atmosphere. So you'd have to have the breathing apparatus before then, but after that, you would not possibly have it because of the changes. And they have meticulous analysis as a trait, and all fingers and thumbs, because again, they have 2 thumbs. Yes, their blood would be a biohazard to humans. That's the thing, is they are a very alien species. Let me look up just to make sure, because I want to know Benzite memory alpha. I think what they're breathing in is I have to figure out the material that they breathe in, because it doesn't say in here. It doesn't really mention what they're breathing in, unfortunately. So I cannot tell you what gas they require to survive. But certainly their home atmosphere of Benzite requires a different material to breathe in. And it was just the genetic engineering that they could accept it with that. Let me take a drink. So yes, those are the Benzite. And, they've got their issues. Well, I guess technically not issues, because it's just their natural way. But speaking of some blue dudes, we can speak of the Bollians. They're from planet Bolaris 9. They're known for their hospitality and outgoing personalities. Control, insight, and presence are their attributes. The most identifying thing is, of course, a cartilaginal ridge that goes around their head, vertically down the center, face down to their chest. Their skins are light blues, though there are some dark greens, muted purples, and darker bandings around the heads. They are mostly bald, though some females have known to have hair on their heads. Their marriages are more than to 2 the more partridges of both sexes, but procreation in the species isn't all that common. With other species isn't all that common, giving Bollians incompatibility with others. So it's one of those things, is even with genetic technology and science, they still have very hard incompatibility with a lot of other species. Remember, one of the reasons that a lot of these alien species, like things like humans and Vulcans, can get together is medical technology can allow for such things. And humans, they say, have in particular have noted several side effects of interspecies relationship, including nausea, fatigue, and inflammation. Something weird about, having relationships with the Bollian. that humans aren't great with it. So they do have a cartilaginous tongue, which makes it capable of consuming substances that other species, such as acids and decaying meat. Their hearts are on the right side of their body, and they have a blue blood around what goes around their circulatory system. And again, they're understanding, hospital. They do have a forward-facing thing in their duties, and like they're really good in things like customer relations and diplomatic service. So Bollians are great diplomats naturally, though granted, doesn't mean you have to be in that direction, but that is kind of the nature of their people. And they also have for talents warm welcome and born near a warp core. So that is a additional thing to check out if you're looking into those abilities. But that is our friends here, the Bollians. So let us switch over once more to our next one, to this here from, I believe, one of the Star Trek motion pictures, a Deltan. They're from the Delta system. They're very closely in appearance to humans, but they have very little hair across their bodies, aside from eyebrows and lashes. And they are a telepathic and pathic species. They are ranked alongside Vulcans and Betazoids as being some of the best to communicate, to read things via thoughts and feelings. There are some Deltan genealogists which believe that Betazoids are some kind of distant cousin to them. Again, questions of evidence in planetary history. We've seen things like this have happened, Vulcans and Romulans, so, and the other thing is they have some of the most potent pheromones in the Federation. And so many other species find Deltans very attractive. And that's why a lot of Deltans that go into Starfleet take an oath of celibacy. Because they don't want to detract their sexuality from their colleagues. Because, again, they have these powerful pheromones that's making everybody attracted to them. If they're just like, oh, we're not doing anything, that's kind of for the best. But, and that is also a good thing because Deltans see the act of intimacy thing. It's for them, it's not involving just their bodies, but also their minds. And so, intimacy is both of those things. So it's certainly them using their powers and abilities could mess around with other people's minds. So control, insight, and presence are the attributes. Anyway, so yes, many of them also use chemical suppressants because their pheromones are very high, powerful aphrodisiac. So some of them not only being very careful with that kind of thing, but using chemical suppressants is a way of trying to mitigate being just sexy. And their talents, of course, are Deltan pheromones and empath. The pheromones are obvious when we talk about that. So it's oh yes, that. Let's talk about the Efrosians. So they hail from planet Efros Delta. They're renowned mostly for being musicians and historians. They have very heavy oral teachings with musical language, and pretty much all Efrosian children are taught some form or another of music. They also make excellent navigators, and so because of this, oftentimes a Efrosian is sought out to be at the helm or a navigation officer, and also being pretty good linguists, translators, and communication experts. So they have very good roles and are sought after as officers in a Starfleet vessel. There have some cranial ridges, very similar to Klingons, but less pronounced. The male's hair is almost always white from birth, where females have darker colors, males have longer mustaches, and both females and males grow hair out of their backs. Attributes are fitness, presence, and reason. So, one of the problems with their planet, harsh freezing storms. So they have a natural resilience and survival instincts because of that. They have 2 stomachs, and they break down a lot of very tough food stuff, and it also helps protect from infections and things. But they do have naturally poor eyesight, The thing that makes up for that is they have a much better sense of smell and taste than many other species. Though their sight is comparably worse than most humanoids, the thing that is kind of interesting about it is they can perceive more of the light spectrum. So it's sort of like, in general, it's worse eyesight, but it's a higher spectrum that they can actually view and recognize. So kind of a weird thing there. So talents are visual spectrum and oral scholar to go along with that. Of course, we move on to our next one in our Beta Quadrant tour, to Klingons. Yes. So, hailing from, Kronos, it's QO''NOS, the Klingon Empire is basically as large as the Federation, even larger than the Romulan Empire. So, technically speaking, is not a Federation group. They are allied with the Federation, even more so post the Dominion War, if you're going after that time period. And certainly, you have members that have either worked for the Federation or joined Starfleet, aka Worf, for a good example. The sagittal crests over their foreheads and crowns is the most notable things. They're taller and stronger than most humanoid species. And that does enhance their reputation as warriors. Again, Klingons have been allies and enemies for the Federation throughout for years. And they are proud people. And certainly it's, Worf's presence in Starfleet and the Federation, has brought about this deeper connection, And there is a deeper appreciation for Klingons. And there are those that have mixed heritage. There are Klingons and humans are compatible. So, they find places within Starfleet and the Federation that they might not find in the Klingon Empire. They embody pride and honor above all else, and they dedicate their lives to the warrior ethos of the honor of house and family. So daring, finesse, and presence are their top tiers. And they have a redundancy in organs. 2 livers, multiple stomachs, 3 lungs, an 8-chambered heart. Their skeletal structure has several redundancies that might incur injuries that would prove fatal to other humanoids. Their bodies are built like tanks, so they are pretty much very hardy species, and it really makes it better for being a warrior, Their literal physical build helps with being a warrior, It helps with being in violent and conflict-ridden kind of areas. They've adapted in such a way. So, talents are to battle, Braklol, which is the physical redundancy stuff, and Rush Style, which is some kind of honor-based thing, because I can barely pronounce these things. Thank you. I will attempt not to butcher it out there, try my best not to butcher it. Let's move on, though. This is a weird little picture, and this is the best picture I could provide of a Regellian Chelon. So they're a hardy race that shares their home system of Rigel with the Regellian Jelna, which we're going to talk about next. And they are apparently descendants of saber-toothed turtles. And though they're bipedal, they retain the ancestral beaks, claws, and hard shells. They're androgynous, take on masculine and feminine societal roles at varying points in their lives, reproducing like most reptilians by laying eggs and fertilizing those eggs. Some traditionalists within the Chelon society maintain a neutral gender and refuse to take on male or female roles. So daring and finesse and insight are their attributes. So again, they're a type of saber-toothed turtle that they're descended from, and they kept a lot of that ancestral form in their bodies. So their beak does allow for a strong, a little bit of a clumsy bite, and they can be trained to use that in close combat fighting. And they do have another thing, if they're stressed or in physical combat, they also have a deadly toxin they can emit through their skin. Which can be used with their claws so that toxin reaches an opponent's blood. They're, of course, skilled swimmers, reptilians, turtles, preferring warm, humid climates, And they're also very resistant to ultraviolet radiation, and to another extent, other types of radiation. And the shell that extends over much of the body might be related to that. So the Chelon shell and toxic claws are their two talents you can choose from. The Chelon are only one group from the Regellian system. We can talk about the other group of Regellians, which I have a much better picture of, which is a little large here, but it's fine. The Regellian Jelna. They're native to the Rigel system. They come from Rigel 5. So I'm thinking the Chelon come from another planet. I'll have to check this. Actually, I can actually do that now. It doesn't tell me what home planet is. That's... Don't tell me what their planet, the other one's there. So, unfortunately... Huh. Whatever. Anyway. Not nice enough to do that. They are diligent and hardworking species, and of the Regellians, they were the first to engage in spaceflight. They were more adaptive than the Jelna. They took to commerce and system-wide government a lot quicker than the Chelon, and but the Jelna weren't aggressive, and have made sure that democratic representation of all Regellian species on the governing board and the Rigel Trade Commission. So, though the Jelna found themselves in a position where they were truly the superior of the two species in the Regellian system, they, in fact, though, were reasonable to their, basically, home system cousins. You know, they're like, we could easily dominate you, but we want you to be here representing Rigel and the system, the Rigel system, with us. So the humanoid Jelnas have 4 genders, 2 male, 2 female genders. The male and female exosexes contain an additional Z chromosome and outnumber the endosexes 2 to 1. The exosexes are the more resilient and physically adaptive member of the species, and the endosexes are more comparable to male and female sexes found in other types of humanoid species. So, yes, 4 genders. You'd have to dive deeper into their makeup to differentiate between the 2 versions of each of those genders. Fitness and presence and reasons are their attributes. So, they evolved similar to many humanoids, other than the 4 sexes. The endosexes are compatible with other humanoids, while exosexes possess more robust fatigue and aggressive tendencies. The endosexes have exclusively gray skin and red eyes and are more suited to nature and care. Exosexes have pale brown complexion. So that's how they tell the two of them apart of their 2 gender sets. And they get 2 talents. You can have exosex, having the Z chromosome, or industrious mind. So those are the 2 groups of Regellians that we go over here. So, let's continue on our tour of the Beta Quadrant with our nice lady here, who is a Risian. Which, if you had missed and didn't watch May the 4th do a Star Trek from at least this year and some of the other years, I've had someone play Risian before. Anyway, so, Risa was a planet of fearsome stores, tectonic instability, and the thing is, the Risian people who came to existence there basically took it upon themselves to essentially terraform their own planet. And that was one of the things, is like, because of like the instability of the planet, the storms that were there, you know, they had to do something about it. They wanted to do something about it, and they did. So now Risa is known as a pleasure planet. So the Risians evolved into the ceremonial society they have today, with tradition and ceremony being at the center of Risian's society. They have honest and open attitude towards sexuality that's pretty renowned throughout the galaxy. Potential mates with a sexual appetite display ceremonial icons called, I'm going to butcher this, Horgan. Invite partners to participate in sexual rite, Jamaron. Jeez, that is a hell of a word there. I tried. Anyway, I tried, as best I can say about that one. Attributes: control, insight, presence. So Risians appear a lot like humans. The decorative gold emblem at the center of their forehead is one of the ways that tells them apart. They've open, adventurous personalities and have a great deal of patience with others. So their talents are peaceful existence and open and insightful. Now, let's talk about the Xindi. Because we're going to talk about 4 of the Xindi. This isn't all the Xindi that are out there, but thank you for that. My pronunciation wasn't too bad. But these are the 4 that are really ones you can play. I think there's like 2 or 3 other Xindi out there. Anyway, the Xindi are basically known for being on a planet where a bunch of intelligent species evolved. And they battled with each other. One of the species went extinct. And when that happened, basically the rest of them figured out how to have peace with each other. Yeah. Also, I think their home planet was destroyed or something, and so they were kind of driven to the other planets in their solar system. There's a lot of stuff about the Xindi that it's like you'd have to go into the exact history and dive deeper into their background. But the first one we're talking about are the Boreal. They contrast many of the other species of the Xindi system, that they are known for having basically an incredibly calm demeanor, and basically are sort of lethargic to a point. They have a relaxed pace that comes with appreciation for logical thought and considered discussion. Since becoming members of the Federation, the Xindi Arboreals have worked in Starfleet and Federation as mediators, counselors, diplomats, and administrators. So, control, insight, and reason. So they're covered with hair with distinctive regions of their nose, cheekbones, and they've evolved from creatures similar to that of the Earth sloth. So that's basically something that could be comparable to like what we would know as a sloth. A type of creature like that is what the Arboreals evolved from. They have sharp claws and slightly longer arms than an average humanoid. And they're kind of calm, rational mind, lack of panic. They don't stress easily, though they do fear large bodies of water. It's basically an inborn fear into their species. And their dark eyes allows them to see in low light conditions compared to many other humanoids. And their 2 talents, their talent is calm under pressure. It's a talent they can choose from. So, after the Arboreals, we have the Xindi Primate. So they were the second species to evolve intelligence after the Xindi Aquatics, which they don't have rules to play because it's a big old whale. That would be very difficult to play. They're talented engineers, but they're also are often fair, honest, and trusted. When the Xindi were included in the United Federation planets in 2311, they basically enhanced their learning and find positions in design, architecture, engineering, research and development, some of their best places to go. And more than many of the other Xindis and species, they have many attend the academy. Many find themselves in command division upon graduation, given their adaptability and audaciousness. So daring, presence, and reasons are their attributes. That is gone dark. There we go. I love it when it does that. They have a similar physiology to humans. They share a characteristic internal organ structure, metabolism, as well as sensory perceptions. Their facial structure is markedly different, however, with pronounced foreheads and ridged cheekbones like other Xindi species. And amongst other Xindi, primates have a reputation for fairness and honesty. Many PP-Bond Xindis have come to regard Xindi primates as trustworthy and decent. And the trait you have access to is a mind for design. But speaking of Xindi, we have 2 more to go into. We have these folks here. The Xindi Reptilain. So, the reptilian species of Xindis are rivals to the Insectoids in aggression. Basically, they had two very aggressive species, the Reptilians and the Insectoids, and are likely to resort to force to achieve their goals. They're notably dishonest and impatient when it comes to dealing with other species, including other Xindis. It's very rare for Reptilians to apply to Starfleet Academy, and rather still for them to be accepted, as their temperament often leads to confrontation. Those Reptilians that do join Starfleet rival Klingons in martial prowess, Tellarites in aptitude for debate, and Zakdorn in tactical expertise. So they do find themselves, if they are slightly more agreeable than your average Reptilian, and, you know, could easily get in there, they have abilities that help them good. Daring, fitness, and presence for attributes. So, Xindi Reptilians, they're cold-blooded. They're reptiles. They prefer hotter climates. Scales, ridges, and spikes cover their bodies, and they have vertical slits for eyes, for low-light clinches and judging depth. They're carnivorous, so they have a protein-heavy diet, giving them muscular tone and definition that enhance their strength and endurance. And again, in amongst Xindi especially, they have a reputation for their aggression, impatience, stubbornness, and generally untrustworthiness, because they just change their minds kind of rapidly, and just, you know, impatience. You know, they just don't stick around. And their talent is stun resistance. It's hard to stun them. Now, the last Xindi that we're going to talk about today is another interesting one. Which, again, trying to find good pictures of these guys is difficult. So, Insectoids. So, as much as aggressive as the Reptilians are, the Insectoids are also considered a very aggressive one. But they're also very decisive. It was them and the Reptilians that are responsible for the destruction of their original homeworld. They detonated vast explosions beneath several seismic active points. Basically, the two of them kind of battling it out caused the homeworld to be destroyed, one of the species to go extinct, and after that, the Xindi came about peace, when their bird people didn't manage to leave their home planet. The rest of them found a way to accept peace then. Difficultly. So, their language is the most complex of the Xindi species, with 67 different dialects of clicks, chirps, and basically any other species has a hard time replicating. And their names grow longer as they age, kind of carrying meaning and life history, much more than any other species given names. So, daring, finesse, and reason are the attributes. They reproduce asexually, with a single adult laying a clutch of eggs. Life expectancy is very short in comparison to other species, though. 12 years is average. Their bodies grant them enhanced abilities, such as crawling and climbing, and their cheek ridges distinguish them as Xindi natives. Similarly, they have, like, all the kind of cheek ridges evolved in the Xindi species. Their talent is protective instinct. So, yeah. You age quickly, don't age and don't last long as a Xindi Insectoid, but it is an option. And now, moving away from the Xindi, we have, I believe this is the last one in the Beta Quadrant. It is the Zakdorn. So, they are seen as the best tactical mind in the galaxy. They excel at complex strategic thinking. This basically enabled the Federation to streamline its defensive policy over the years, and Zakdorn officials oversee training exercises and war games for Starfleet. They have a personal confidence and conviction considered that can be often considered boasting or hubris, but because there really is no rival to ever test their military and their might this way in stratagem, it tends to be hard to disprove. And regardless, though, their strategies have basically helped Starfleet and Federation immeasurably since they joined in the early 24th century. So this has done a lot for Starfleet and the Federation. Attributes: insight, presence, and reason. So they are shorter than most humanoids and have distinctive wrinkles and fatty tissue over the faces and bodies. The fatty layers enable them to survive without food for a much longer period than most humanoids, and their analytical brains give them an edge in logic and reasoning that rivals even the Vulcans. Now, granted, they don't have necessarily the emotional control, but again, they have the logic that they can very easily do. And their talents are tactical voice and master strategist. So, and there is our tour of the Beta Quadrant. Yay! I'm glad I'm only doing the 2 quadrants today, because I don't think I'd be able to get through the Delta Quadrant if I chose to do that. But now we're going to move on to another interesting quadrant, because we're going to move away from the Beta Quadrant and familiarity of basically original series stuff to what's only next gen and older information. We're going to the Gamma Quadrant. We're going through the wormhole. We're visiting Deep Space Nine. So, let's introduce ourselves to those of the Gamma Quadrant, the Argrathi. So, the Argrathi consider themselves the most civilized and ordered culture in the Gamma Quadrant. So, years ago, got rid of their penal system, basically developed a series of laws that were very easy to understand, and basically changed the punishment for most crimes from imprisonment to having false memories implanted into their minds so that they can serve out their sentence instantaneously but feel like they've been imprisoned for years. So, effectively, got rid of the penal system. Okay, great. Changed their laws, and you get to enjoy a mind worth of, a experience driven into your brain of being in jail that doesn't actually exist. That's a heck of a thing. So, since they see themselves as very orderly, a lot of their time is pursuing things like literature, defensive technology. Because of this order in their nature, law is one of the most sacred things to uphold. Their police officers oftentimes cooperate with other planets to maintain peace across the Gamma Quadrant. The only time they would refuse to follow a law if it conflicts with one of their own established laws. They see their legal system as superior. They don't want to break their legal system. They break someone else's legal system basically because of that. Their attributes are fitness, insight, and reason. They tend to be very blunt and direct. They want to see punishment carried out quickly, and their legal system is, of course, best. Possibility of mistakes could be made, but because their promotion of peace and justice, a lot throughout the Gamma Quadrant, they are seen as basically the most reasonable of all races. And they hope that all the cultures, including the Dominion, will see their legal system as the most proper. And until then, they follow the rules as best they can to ensure law and order across the quadrant. So their talents are absolute conviction and mind games. So, there are rules for it. There are options for it. There is an entire panel about talking about it. We got to talk about changelings. You can play one. Now, this is another thing that does mention in the book. They're powerful. There's a lot of things that make them very heavy story characters. And the thing is, it's not that you couldn't play one, but it's something that, you really need your game master to approve of, and there has to be rules in place, and basically, it would be, you'd most likely have to be a changeling outside the Dominion, that's the best way you could do it, because they did send out people like Odo, who's one of the people seen there, and Odo was a reasonable member of other societies. So it's not impossible to play changeling. It's just one of those things that it's very difficult to play and shouldn't be just allowed. Kind of thing of talk about it with the player, know the player, understand yeah, what's going on. Anyway, so, to those in the Gamma Quadrant, the founders of the Dominion, the Changelings, are creatures of myth and legend. Few of them realize that these mythical changelings are from the Quadrant's distant history, and are in fact the same species that rules over the Dominion. To the Alpha Quadrant, they're a threat, and very difficult to counter. Think about it, they caused the Dominion War. So yeah, the entire species is composed of basically a morphogenic substance, which allows them to take on the appearance of what they try to mimic and the physical qualities as well. They can change their form things like rocks, trees, simple animals, and more experienced ones can mimic appearances of other more difficult species. And that could mean you could change into a Starfleet officer or a shower of light that gently goes throughout a room. So, they've even discovered the secret of interstellar travel by taking the form of an organization that can enter subspace at will. Some of them can do that. So, unlike other shape-shifting species in the galaxies, they're unique that they can shift their molecules around and literally turn into rocks around them, which makes it very difficult to locate without all but the most intensive scans. They're not untappable, however. Sensors can be calibrated to find their bioreadings, and low-intensity phaser sweeps are found unbearable by them. And they also can't hold the same form indefinitely. They do have to rest in their gelatinous safe, or they start to decay and flake, basically. So control, finesse, and presence are their attributes. So naturally, if you're a changeling, you're an orange-brown fluid, and you can adopt to being something solid. But they can adopt the form of any solid structure, and this includes living creatures, diffused substances like fog. They can't be energy. They can assume any other form limited by skill and experience and physicals. And they can transfer mass to and from substance in order to change size and densities. They've had persecution issues by basically solids because of their shape-shifting ability. And they do crave a sense of order and justice in the universe that tends to be very at odds with their fluid forms. Two talents are, of course, mutagenic matrix and morphogenic mastery. So that is our friends, the changelings. Let's move on. The Dosi. The Dosi kind of do have a very comical form at distance with their brightly painted faces and numerous markings on their skin. But they don't appreciate mockery. They are equally adept at being both merchants and warriors. They are opposing site and trading outposts along the Gamma Quadrant. They have aggressive negotiation tactics combined with their need to not appear foolish. Basically leads many to take steps not to offend them. Their alliance with the Dominion has ensured the Dosi can roam as they please across the Gamma Quadrant as long as they do not interfere in the Dominion's business and continue to earn profit. Contrary to the belief that they do only appreciate war and profit, they're also very excellent artists and vintners, with Tulaberry wine becoming a very important trade good between the Alpha and Gamma Quadrants. Fitness, insight, and presence are their attributes. They are a conundrum to outsiders, but their culture has lasted thousands of years. They paint their skin a brilliant swirling patterns of stripes, dots to denote battles they've won or great accomplishments they've achieved. So the painting is ceremonial. But they don't do things subtly either. When they walk into a room, they make sure everybody has noticed they've arrived. And they consider everything to be a test of skill. Especially when it comes to trade negotiation. They approach each business deal with the same meticulous planning they most might focus on winning a war. Their talents are strength and cunning and glorious notoriety. Here's another one for the books. The Drai. So, they're a reclusive race, and most of the time they spend is out exploring the universe in pursuit of prey. They're known as basically hunters to the majority of the Gamma Quadrant. Unlike others under the control of the Dominion, they are free to roam as they please and are given significant leeway in how they manage their own affairs. They are masters in the field of cloning, too, and they are responsible for creating the perfect prey and perfect soldiers. Their genetic mastery, they created the Tosk, which I'll talk about a little later, which is one of the most challenging prey for them to stalk. And they've created the Jem'Hadar, which are proving a domineering feat which have proven the domineering fist of the Dominion for centuries. So basically, the Jem'Hadar, the genetically engineered soldiers of the Dominion, were created by the Drai. They're proud, vain, and focused solely on their own affairs. They pursue hunt as the grandest thing they can do in their lives. Success is shared publicly, so too is failure, though. And it isn't uncommon for failed hunters to find their names spread throughout the quadrant as shameful examples for others. Daring, finesse, and presence are their attributes. So they care only for the hunt, and each will only wear the finest hunting gear that they can buy. Right? Even day-to-day clothing is focused more towards being fit for survival. Hidden pouches, miniaturized survival equipment, kind of commonly found on them at all times. When they're on the hunt, they do not change clothes and spend every waking hour pursuing their prey. When they're not hunting, they also find themselves maintaining peak physical fitness, and they train to keep their eyes and reflexes sharp. Genetic mastery and born stalker are their two talents that they can choose from. Let's continue onward and talk about the Karemma. I probably put more flair on that one. Oh, you didn't see the image of the one before? Can pop up. There's the Dosi. There's the I just said them. The Drai. And yeah, it's a little small there. Might have not popped up. I didn't notice if it did at that time. The Karemma. So, honesty and integrity are the cornerstone of their life. They're the unofficial merchant caste of the Dominion, and they've been tasked by the founders for regulating trade across the Gamma Quadrant. Very different than the Ferengi, who always attempt to leverage the rules to provide an unfair advantage when they're dealing with. They prefer openly and honest to deal openly and honestly. They're not all naive, though, as they study hard in order to maintain high positions in their corporatocracy. They have a shrewd business sense, and their honesty gives them a fair amount of trust by the founders and allows them to maintain economic workings of the Dominion. If their fault, it's their pursuit of honesty can also force them into entering into contracts against their will. That's their fault. And none of them would willing to basically dishonor themselves or their family by engaging in dishonesty. Though, they will always pursue strongly worded deals that benefit themselves. So they won't be dishonest. Doesn't mean they can't benefit themselves in a deal. You'll just know about it. Attributes: control, reason, and presence. They have a very tall appearance, kind of a bird-like nature. They stand out in a crowd. And many of them actually prefer to be seen rather than ignored anyway. From an early age, they're taught to the delicate art of appraising what they see around them. And most of them are able to tell an object's true worth in a few moments of inspection. So basically, they kind of pick something up and be like, this is worth this much. This does often, sometimes inadvertently, lead them to basically offend hosts. You know, if someone asks Karemma what something's value is, you know, they're going to be honest about it and basically declare how much anything is. And they'll like move about an area basically describing how much an individual's objects are worth. They'll be honest about it. So talents are My Honor is My Shield and Instant Appraisal. We'll move on, though. There we go. The Lurians. So the Lurians are a race known for their fierce martial skill and for their artistic endeavors. Their homeworld is near the wormhole. Their world is controlled by the royal family of Luria, and they are a frequent sight at outposts and trading posts across the quadrant. Their skill as navigators and warriors make them prized members of many crews. They have multiple hearts, 2 stomachs, and they do require a large quantity of food, and they have religious customs that dictates that attendees to a Lurian funeral should bring plenty of food and liquor to see the dead through the journey in the afterlife. Some Lurians have become involved in criminal endeavors, such as the Orion Syndicate. They basically prefer to make their own way across the quadrant, and so it's, not uncommon to see a lone Lurian playing its way through space on another great adventure. Control, fitness, and presence are their attributes. They are a passionate people, never do anything in half measure. Whether they're dedicated to the arts, becoming the greatest pilots, they live with their emotions deep on their sleeves, and which is despite their very normal, impassive facial features. Their facial features don't reflect their emotions. They're thinkers and dreamers. They do appear quiet because of their basically appearance. Truly in their minds, though, all the important matters, formulations of plans are going through it at the time. The Dominion War was of great interest on the Lurians' homeworld, where their people swing from obsession how the war will play out, for their people to mild annoyance that the war is all that the off-worlders talk about. So basically it's like, it was interest that, oh hey, how will this affect our people, to, oh hey, it's kind of annoying, that's all they're talking about. Their talents are Into the Breach and Resistant Anatomy. We got some more to talk here. So let's talk about the Paradans. So these are one of the few Gamma Quadrant races near the wormhole who haven't been absorbed in the Dominion. They possess an understanding of cloning techniques. They have this kind of reptilian appearance, obnoxious odor. They're a resourceful species that have the ability to create cloned replicants that help them wage covert wars with their neighbors for centuries. It didn't appear again. Thank you. I pop it up and it just, sometimes it breaks when I switch the thing here. Whatever. I gotta keep an eye out just to make sure it doesn't break. The replicants are so exact that they can often be undetected by bioscanners, and many do not know they're replicants until their cellular structure begins to decay after they've successfully completed or failed their mission. They come from a curious culture that inspires many to leave their homeworld and travel to the Alpha Quadrant to see what's in store for them. They have superior medical knowledge and natural ruggedness. They are not afraid to travel even into dangerous war zones if only to satisfy their curiosity. Finesse and insight and presence are their attributes. So they do rely on their olfactory gland to help determine the mood of whoever they speak with. Basically, their olfactory gland, they can kind of judge some moods and stuff like that. They have potent scent glands around their bodies that release potent odors. They are physically imposing and are capable of surviving in hot environments. So, replicating past success and distracting senses is their talents. Let's hope this sticks up here. I'll just make sure it does. I'll watch it. No, it went away. Yeah, thank you. I had to click on it twice. I just have to watch that. So, the Rakhari. Them as a people are very resilient and stoic. Their planet has seen dozens of conflicts throughout history. They, in DS9 Next Gen timeline, had pretty much just completed their 12th what we of Earth would call World War, when their current government came into being and declared the majority of crimes on their planet punishable by death. So this tense atmosphere has led many Rakhari to finally know peace for the first time in centuries. There is still a strong dissonant movement slowly accumulating power on the planet, and more Rakhari are taken to the stars to escape the government. So they're becoming a common sight at the edges of Dominion space. So, a people that have had massive amounts of world wars and still survived. Daring, insight, and reason are their attributes. So, the set of laws they live under are known as the canon. It's a very strict set of laws. It was put in place about a century ago, and it's basically strict obedience to the state. But this control that the state has lessened in recent years. So many Rakhari are beginning to think for themselves. Some still carry themselves in a rough, cautious manner. But there's a growing portion of the population that's basically starting to dream of a different kind of life. There's demonstrations are becoming more common. Firebrands seeking to change the society. Yeah. They're primarily driven by their families, and whether it's the biological families or adopted ones, they'll do anything to ensure the safety or survival of the group. So it doesn't have to just be biological family, it could be adopted family. Their talents are truth in the matter and disciplined mind. So we can take a look at those if you're interested. Let me see if that will help it when I do that. Did that help it? No, it still went gray. I don't know what's going on with that. It's got to be something left over from some of the other various issues I've got. No. Weird. So the Skreeaa with 2 E's and 2 A's. There are people that have been oppressed for centuries and have been forced to suffer basically inhumane indignity of exploitation of foreign rule. Compared by T-Rogans, their culture was reduced to servile state until the Dominion conquered the T-Rogans in turn. Now they are scattered around the Gamma Quadrant, with few having managed to escape through the anomaly into the Alpha Quadrant. In exchange for planet colonized, several Skreeans have brought their enduring work ethic, physical strength to the Federation, with a few of them joining Starfleet even. They're known for their tough abrasive skin and their durable muscle tissue, thanks to higher than normal gravity in their former homeworld. They're deeply religious and dream of finding Kenta, the paradise world that the Skreeans believe exists somewhere in the galaxy, and that's their reward for enduring untold hardships throughout their history. So yes, there is a group of them that are living in the Federation, members of it, because honestly, they were horribly conquered, oppressed, and treated terribly, and then the Dominion came in, basically liberated them, so they basically were able to get free. Kind of. Well, sort of liberated. Conquered them in a different way. Daring, fitness, and presence are their attributes. So they shed their skin routinely, causing them to leave behind skin flakes. Females are generally taller than males, and it's not uncommon for a Skreean woman to have multiple husbands. Their language uses unique syntaxes that take some time for universal translators to develop a translation matrix. So it's not that their universal translators can't translate it, it just takes a little time because of their unique syntaxes. Develop a matrix. Their challenges are agricultural specialists and strength through struggle. Let's see if I can switch this nicely. Hey, it switched nicely. The Sona. So they are a new addition to Dominion's rank of allies, but they are also important in the war with the Alpha Quadrant. They're unique that they're an offshoot of the Baku, a race that hails from a planet in the sector of space known as the Briar Patch. They're a race of conquerors who had subjugated several neighboring systems into a small but powerful empire, and they weren't afraid to apply weaponry like isolyptic subspace weapons, which tear holes in subspace, release deadly waves of energy. They used slave labor and illegal genetic tampering meant that the Federation could not initiate trade with them, although a rogue Starfleet admiral was caught offering them assistance in a plot to drain their homeworld of its metaphasic radiation. So some Sona have returned to their homeworld to start over. A large number of their race refused to give up their wealth and territory and allied themselves with the Dominion during the war. Although make up a small portion of the Dominion's armed forces, the Sona fight ravenously against the Federation because they see themselves as having ruined a chance for immortality. Some Sona refuse to join the race's vendetta against the Federation, instead travel as traders of illicit goods. Daring, control, and insight. They were similar to humans in appearance, but centuries of exile from the homeworld has led them to experiment upon themselves to stay alive. Most spend several hours each day undergoing beautification treatments and extensive genetic modifications in order to stay alive. Most have been described as possessing a stretched appearance of their faces, while others develop powerful legions on their bodies. Sona's children are almost never permitted to leave their homeworld, are similar persons to the Baku, possessing pale skin. There's the Baku here? We did not. So talents are all costs and particle engineering. Can I find a Baku very quickly? Let's see. Track. Baku. Yeah. Oh, they're the people from Star Trek Insurrection. That's where the Briar Patch was. Okay. So the Briar Patch was from Insurrection. Star Trek Insurrection. Got you. Okay. Got you. Sorry. So yeah. There were people, these are people that apparently are an offshoot of the Baku people from Star Trek Insurrection. If you want to look into knowing about those people, they're from another thing. I don't think they're in one of these books here, because I don't think they leave their planet. Anyway, so there's a Sona. But, when we talked about the Drai, I mentioned the Tosk. The Tosk were a created race where their genomes are meticulously screened, developed, and created as a race basically the Drai created them. They were created with one purpose in mind. They are prey for Drai's hunts. Drai are, hunt is the most important thing. So they kind of bored themselves hunting lesser life forms throughout the galaxy. So that's why they created the Tosk, a reptilian survival that is born with all the knowledge they need to provide a meaningful hunt for the hunters. They only need 17 minutes of sleep a day. They can survive off of simple protein chains for weeks if needed. Although the Drai like to ensure every Tosk is tracked down and captured, it's not unheard of for a Tosk to go rogue from the hunt and seek shelter amongst the hunter's enemies. The Tosk are considered outcast among their own kind, and the Drai will do anything to bring these rogue creatures back to their homeworld, where they can suffer the most horrible death of all, being kept alive and on display for the masses in a zoo, where their shame of pain for all to see. This is very weird. The Tosk who go rogue value their freedom too much to accept that fate willingly and do anything to remain free. So, control, daring, and finesse are their attributes. So they're completely identical, as their genome is often replicated from the same source material. So most Tosk are just Tosk. Some of them differ due to preferences and hunters' requests. Each is strong, resourceful, cunning. When they enter a room, they instinctively size up many ways to escape, as well as anything they could do to help them fight. Although they are peaceful and do not wish to inflict harm on others, they do have these feral instincts that allow them to fight ferociously when the need calls for it. They're issued a simple suit that helps with their magnetic abilities, as well as providing a storage compartment for the protein mixes. They are issued as a food supply. And if they hold still, they can initiate their shroud the same manner as the Jem'Hadar soldier. And their talents are survival's luck and last breath. That's our friend the Tosk. And we finish up today. I might have been able to do the last one, but we'll split it up so we're not going too long. With the Wadi. Let's talk about the Wadi. So they were the first species to formally introduce itself to the Alpha Quadrant and begin trade negotiations. They're obsessed with life and mastering all the games it has to offer. They're whimsical people. They're prone to bouts of rhyming and singing at the same time to demonstrate their technological superiority and intellectual mastery of multiple disciplines. they have not yet been absorbed by the Dominion. They're considered a threat to its they're not considered a threat to its expansion, though. They prefer to spend their days mastering pursuits and bringing them pleasures of any kind rather than formal military endeavors. It doesn't mean there's significant power in the Gamma Quadrant, as their ships possess the ability to manipulate matter, covertly transport subjects without being detected, and develop complex holographic fields. Despite these achievements, they're viewed with distrust by species that often see them as kind of flighty, esoteric, and it kind of hides their ruthlessness. Attributes are finesse, insight, and presence. They tend to be a little bit mysterious, but also outgoing. They like bright colors, brilliant tattoos on their bodies. They attract attention, but are also very good at deflecting any real scrutiny. They're also competitive. And when they feel like they've been cheated, they must avenge their honor by not only crushing the opponent at whatever game or task, but also teaching them a lesson. And they have an obsession with the game of Marine, which can be used to teach both innocent and guilty of what it's like to cross a Wadi. And their talents are come with me and life is a game. But that will be it for today. We'll save the Delta Quadrant and maybe some extras for another time. But for now, I think that's pretty good. So you can see there's a lot of interesting options. And certainly, talking about a lot of these, there are plenty that you could definitely see would possibly be... Some of them are members of the Federation, could possibly join the Federation or Starfleet, be involved with things. When we talk about the Beta Quadrants, many of them are Starfleet members, or at least or Federation members, or at very least could join Starfleet. Even when we're talking about some of the Gamma Quadrant ones, there's certainly ones that have options for being partially part in the Federation, or or kind of going to the Federation, joining Starfleet or something like that, at least being part of that entire territory. And it does allow for some interesting concepts for characters. And again, yes, there are complexities in certain characters, and whether or not playing them would be great or not, that's a question for the ages, and for your GM. Your game master will determine, hey, what's appropriate to play? You could always ask questions. It just gives options. If you're in some area of space near DS9, certainly you could be a Gamma Quadrant species that, maybe got trapped. Some that came over before the Dominion War, got trapped after the Dominion War, or during the Dominion War, or something like that, There are plenty more to talk about. And we'll talk about them. But right now, I think we'll definitely leave it. I will talk about more Star Trek adventures in the future. Remember, if you want to check out any of my tabletop streams, either live or after they're on YouTube, if they're live, they're on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, Tuesdays and Thursdays around 1 p.m., Saturdays around 11 a.m. When they go up on YouTube, it's usually at 4 o'clock EST in the these are all EST, in the afternoon, usually a day or two after they're streamed live on Twitch. You can always join me in chat, like Worm does here. Or you can leave comments on the YouTube channel. Always love that. Follow Twitch, subscribe YouTube, leave a like, comment, all that kind of stuff. Best ways to check out what's going on with me, Discord and Twitter. I'll have my brain farts, or at least let people know the schedule. And I think that's really about all the stuff that's drawn out here. So I'm going to say to all of you out there, thank you for joining me. I hope you learned and enjoyed. And basically delve deeper into, there's a lot of interesting things to play in your Star Trek Adventures games. And a lot of creativity from these different places and groups that are either members of the Federation, or certainly you could have options just to join Starfleet. But anyway, I'm going to say farewell for now, everybody. Have yourself a great rest of your day. Farewell.